This is what I know to be true so far, the show that inspires you to awaken the magic within and step into your most authentic life. I'm Kerriann, a multi-passionate spiritual mentor, magic maker, nature energy alchemist, and creator of the Rebellion of Love. If you're ready to experience self-liberation and create a life entirely on your terms, this is the show for you. I'm so grateful to have you with me on this journey to awakening the magic within with what I know to be true so far. Hello and welcome, beautiful souls. Today's guest is Amy Malloy. She's an award-winning journalist, book editor, and the creator of the hit podcast, The Space, with over 7 million downloads. She's written, edited, and ghostwritten over 50 books, including her new book, which we are talking about today, Wise Child. Published by Hay House, it's already making so many waves for the next generation. I found this to be such an incredible book for parenting, and it really helped me get a more holistic viewpoint on what it's really like to parent these new generation of children. Amy is doing such incredible things on our planet, being a trauma-informed editor, as well as helping women worldwide share their stories through her courses and her online mentoring. She's originally from London, and she now calls the south coast of Sydney home, where she lives with her nature-loving husband and her 3 wild, wonderful children. You're going to love this episode. Amy and I dive into so many of the stories and experiences that she has had and I have had, both as parents raising children who are born into this time, into this world, to really make change and impact, and what that really means without making it overwhelming for ourselves and for our children, so that we can hold the spaciousness to also just be human and enjoy this human experience. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on. I've been mildly stalking you and reading your book and hearing lovely things about you from a mutual friend, and it's just so great to have you on. Amy, welcome to the show. Are you able to let my audience know a little bit about who you are, what you do, and this incredible book that you've written?
Yes, where do I begin? The easiest way to describe what I do, who I am, I'm a journalist, an editor. I've been working for a very long time, working with mainstream media and then offshoots of more alternative media too. I specialize in mental wellness and mental health for a long time. My own story, I published a book like 18 years ago about how my first husband died a few weeks after our wedding day and how I dealt with the grief of his death and being a 23-year-old widow. And that kind of really rocketed me into the mental health space when we weren't talking about it. We weren't writing about it. It wasn't like now where everyone's social media is full of it. And the same, I was writing about meditation and spirituality long before it was trendy. I was lucky my parents taught me to meditate when I was a teenager, but I remember pitching articles on meditation to my editors of magazines, and they were like, no, it's too niche. No one's interested in that. So it's so funny to see how far we've come. And then my new book, Wise Child, I did not plan to write. It was not on my career plan to write a book about past life parenting. But then, as most things in my career, I always say I write where I'm led, which I'm sure you totally get. It's a kind of anchor statement for me whenever I think what am I doing? Where am I going? Because I cover so much as a journalist and as an investigative reporter. And I always just say I write where I'm led. And 6 years ago, when my little boy, my second child, was born, I was led into past life parenting for the experience I'm sure we're going to talk about. And then, I am always a journalist through and through. So when things happen in my life that feel like a milestone moment to me, I will always look at okay, how is this a trend? Is other people doing this? Is this something we should be talking about? And sometimes it's no. Sometimes it's no, this is just your experience. But this was much, much bigger. And, you've read the book. It became something way bigger than I ever imagined. And so, here I am right now in my career talking about past life parenting and how this generation of kids, we know as mums, are so different. There is no way around that. They are incredibly eloquent and tapped in and tuned in. They're also deeply sensitive and empathetic. And so how we can look at parenting them differently in a way that completely changes the paradigm for all of us. And that's what the book is all about.
It's honestly, it's an incredible book. When I picked it up and I started reading, I had the feeling that I always get when I have readings of a teacher where I'm like, there's so much truth to this.
Mm.
And my children and my experience with my children has always been very open-minded. Not with my first, because I was 23, 24. I was a party animal. I'd only been 6 months sober from an 8-year drug addiction. I had that kid and I was like saved, like I decided to become an accountant and live normal and be like a normal human being. So I find like I didn't have that early experiences with him. But by the time I had my son, I'd started my spiritual journey and I was a lot more open. So when I took a video of my belly and he was in there kicking and there was ghost babies laughing in the background of the video, I was not that surprised by it. I was like, oh yeah, he's just got ghost friends. That's cool. And when he came out talking to angels, I was like, that's cool,
Yes.
But the thing that I was reading in that book that blew my mind was this idea, and this is something that has been something I've been thinking so much about, is that I approach parenting with this very openness and I allow my kids to guide me a lot, I think, on their spiritual findings. And, my daughter sees fairies and we talk about that and all those things. But I've still been sitting in the seat of, I'm here to teach and guide. And when I was
Yes.
reading the start of your book, I'm like, dude, this is not their first radio show. This is
Mm.
like, how many lives have they had before this one? All of the wisdom that I possibly have missed up until now by assuming I'm here to guide them, when really they have a wealth of knowledge that they've brought from their past lives into this life, and they can teach me so much and I can allow them to
Yes.
be the guide. Can you talk a little bit about this concept that blew my mind?
Yes. So it's the idea of like breaking down the hierarchy of our family, which, it goes, you can go to the extreme of any way. You can go to like parents have all the answers and we're here to teach our kids. You can also swing to the other way, which is like our kids completely dominate everything and it's all about what they want. And neither is, for me, feels truthful. Like it's really that collaboration of seeing us all as like level and on the same level within our family. And it's a co-creation and a collaboration between all of us, because it's not like, oh, I've got a 4-year-old, I've got a 6-year-old, I've got an 8-year-old, and that's all they are. It's that they're bringing forward this wealth of hundreds of years of wisdom and fears and hang-ups and emotional baggage, just like I am, just like my husband is, just like their educators are,
Mm,
just like their childcare carers are. And so how can we mesh all of that together in this beautiful entanglement and learn from each other, which is a really different way. And also the relief of that, right? To not think that I need the answers. Just blew, like, I felt like when it really sat with me, it just felt like this weight just fell away from my shoulders to be like, I don't need all the answers for how to fix this 6-year-old who is struggling at school, or how to get this 8-year-old to conform because she's so different, or whatever it is. Like the one of the most milestone moments in this book was when my then 3-year-old, who was born in lockdown, like many kids,
mm,
and I felt carried so much, there was lockdown, there was race riots, there was so much when she was born, and I felt such heaviness for her. And when she was 3, and we didn't talk about COVID a lot in our house, we don't have the news on, we really try and keep the world light. She turned around to me out of nowhere when she was 3 and she said, Mummy, do you know I was chose to be born during lockdown? So you don't need to feel bad anymore.
mm,
And it was like this moment of like, yes, you were born for this time and you chose to be born in this time. And you and your little COVID friends who were all born in lockdown will be the shift the world needs to progress in this time. And
mm,
so instead of me thinking, oh my God, how can I make her more resilient and capable? She was born ready for this way more than I am and you are. These kids are
mm,
created to be living now. And that's such a different thing than like constantly worrying as we do as parents about like, how are they going to be in the future? How are they going to cope with this changing world? They are
mm,
wired for this changing world. And that's why so many of them are struggling to fit in with the old boxes we're trying to put them in. And
mm,
there's a section in the book on like new age neurodivergence and our little ADHD kids. and what is really at the root of all of this. And so, it really was triggered by my little boy, who was like my difficult baby, so to speak, my unsettled baby, my baby who was like in crowds or around loud noises, was like inconvenient because I was always having to like give him more care or take him away or like change our situation for him. And for, the first 18 months of his life, I was like, how can I get him to fit in? Like his sister was so easy. She would go anywhere. She would sleep anywhere. And then I had this past life therapy session where I was given a complete understanding of who he'd been in a previous life. He'd been a great healer hundreds and hundreds of years ago. He hadn't reincarnated for a very long time. And he was finding landing in 2018 so jarring, so too much of everything. But also, he's such an empath because he has been a healer. Like he needed that empathic tendencies to help people in the past. Plus, he had been so used to helping other people that he didn't know how to take help from me, his mum. So all this love and care I was trying to give him, he didn't know how to accept from me, and he didn't feel safe with me. And it was just such a defining moment of me, for me, of being like, yeah, he's not just this baby that I birthed and now I'm molding. He's so much more. And so how can I parent him in a different way? And he's still my highly sensitive kid to
Mm.
this day, but I now can know how to parent him most of the time because I don't try. I see him for who he is and who he's been, and then I see me for who I am and who I've been, and so it completely shifts the energy in our household.
That is incredible. I think that there are so many interesting pieces to the puzzle around the past life stuff. And my experiences, not just with my own kids. I remember bouncing on a trampoline once with this little girl at a friend's party, and it was actually an old client's party. And we were bouncing the trampoline, and she goes, "Oh, I knew you before I knew my mummy." And I was like, "Did you?" Like bouncing around. And she goes, "Yes, yes, you love nature, especially trees." And I was like, "Okay." And she's like, "And you came here to make people happy." And I was like, "Okay." And then I was
Oh,
like, "Oh." And I'm like, "How did you know?" She goes, "We knew you before my mummy." And I said, "Oh, I think I might have met you at school before." She goes, "No, no, before." She's like, "Remember the big white light? And you were standing there and you were telling me it's safe and I'm going to be okay." And I was like, "I don't remember that, but it sounds amazing." And I spoke to her mum. I'm like, "Did you tell her that I talk to trees? Do you tell her I'm a
mm,
tree communicator, that I love nature, that I make people happy?" She's like, "No, dude." And I'm like, "Your daughter just sent this to me." And I am wildly spun out. And they are not a spiritual family by any means. And the mum was just like, "That's a really random thing to say," but she always talks about the white light and the person that was there to help her. And I was like, that is wild to me.
yes. And that's been my favorite thing about promoting this book is like I knew that I would be having these conversations with people who are already kind of believers or like exploring new ageism and already have had their own experiences that helps this feel true for them. And I thought it would be quite a niche book at first. It's published by Hay House, who obviously like this is their jam. And it's funny, the launch of the book was pushed back a year. It was meant to come out this time last year. And I was in such a huff that like it was pushed back and it didn't fit my schedule and all my humanness. And I was like ranting to my mentor about how, but I planned it for last year. But I think, I mean, of course, it's had perfect timing for the world and where we are now. And the people talking to me about it, and even the media who are covering it, are not the people in the spiritual space. They're not the mums who have already had like years of Reiki and past life regression. They're like my husband's tradie mates whose kids have come out with something. Or it's like the Daily Mail who covered it in a huge way, not in this like, oh my God, hear about this wacky new trend way,
Yeah.
but actually like wanted me to write an in-depth piece about my experiences and what I've heard and what I've researched. And I would have never have believed that like a year ago, 5 years ago, that in like air quotes, normal spaces, normal people are actually saying, my kid says this. My kids have dreams about this. My kid says, yeah, I used to be your mummy in another life. Or I have a dream of remembering a portal opening and choosing to come back into Earth.
Mm.
Or like we're talking about it just as a mainstream topic now, which is like, it reminds me of when I was trying to get meditation across the line all those years ago or mental health topics. And I mean, it's so exciting for us to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
And like for the daughter of your friends who are not like traditionally spiritual, that she's saying, yeah, mommy, I remember this.
Mm.
And then how can those people be open, not just saying don't be silly,
Yeah. And
or
how to
that's just
respond, like what's the welcoming
yeah.
way to respond that allows the openness for them to expand instead of shutting it down?
Like, how can we talk to our teachers about it and our educators in a way that doesn't mean like you need to believe this thing? Because my message for this book is like not you need to believe in past lives, you need to believe in reincarnation. It's that our kids have something to tell us.
Mm.
And especially when it comes to like death and impermanence and the circle of life and all these, even gender and sexuality and money and climate change and topics we kind of want to shy away from because they feel confronting. Even our littlest kids have so much to say. And like when we're sitting here going, oh my God, how is the world going to survive? How are we going to be saved? Like our kids hold so many of the answers if we can be open enough to listen to them.
Yeah, and just trust it too. Like I mean, maybe I'm just delusionally optimistic. I have no fear or doubt about the future. I'm like, what do you mean? Have you met the children? Like, have you gone to a school like volunteer day and had conversations with the kids? They have so much wisdom around emotions and so much intelligence around emotions, but so many creative ideas on what it means
Yes.
for life. And I
They
have,
have their solution, no doubt. They absolutely, but so much of this book is about raising kids who trust their intuition.
yeah,
Because as you and I know, and so many of the people I speak to who now work in the healing space, but we took a giant detour to get here. We spent most of our 20s, 30s, going and conforming, being shut down, being told you're too much, too dramatic, too sensitive. So we not I'll never use the word wasted because of course it's part of our journey, but we took a huge detour to get back to
yeah,
feeling empowered enough to teach and heal and have these conversations.
yeah.
And what if we can help our kids to skip that part
Mm.
and just to like go from childhood to teenage years through their 20s, trusting their intuition enough to go, that gut feeling I'm having, that like spark of an idea I'm having, even though it might seem crazy to some people, especially the older generation, I'm going to follow that thread because it feels like magic to me.
Yeah.
So much of the book is like really practical steps to teaching our kids to trust their intuition, to protect their energy, to understand energy, hygiene, and discernment, so that they don't have to sit there constantly questioning, like, is my compass off? Can I trust myself? Because we're teaching them to know that their feelings are true, even if they don't feel true to someone else.
Yeah, I love this because my whole childhood, it was you've got a really big imagination, you're being crazy, you've just seen that it's not really there, and just feeling like all of my gifts were a burden to the people around me.
Yeah.
And I shut off with drugs, sex, alcohol, partying, heavy metal, whatever. Like I was punk all the way. And when I kind of came out of that and I started rediscovering, and this whole journey of rediscovering my gifts and my ability to have really good intuition and healing abilities, all these things, I think a huge part of that was so that Marley, Patton, and Suki had a mum that could support them in their journey. Because I often think to myself, they have no limitations on what's possible in the realm of intuition and magic and things like that, because they're seeing a mum who's like, oh, you've seen a fairy, let's go and have a look for it. What did you see? What color was it? All these sorts of
Yeah.
things. Or when Patton is talking to the elders or he's talking to the angels, his angel's called Happy Man, and I'm like, is Happy Man here? And like there was this really big openness, and I wouldn't have been able to do any of that had I not gone through that journey myself of knowing how hard it is not to have the support as that kind of more spiritual child. Do you think that we all, like all these mamas who are now healers or we're into spirituality, we've all gone through that passage or that rite of passage so that we then can now support this generation of children who are so highly attuned or high frequency, and they're here to actually do the changes and make the changes, but we're kind of like the preppers.
Absolutely. And, like we have a mutual friend, Justine Sharkey, who you had in your podcast before. And, we have like you guys do a constant back and forth of voice notes, which is talking about spirituality, but also very real, just mama shit. Like, oh my God, this happened. How do I deal with this? I'm so depleted and deflated. And like, there's so many messages we send. Well, one of us, or normally me, is like doubting whether I have it in me to raise this kid. One of
Mm.
my three kids is struggling with something, and I'm just saying, I don't know if I have it in me. Like, I don't know if I can keep advocating, keep fighting for them, keep having the strength, keep sitting in my trust of I know the way forward. And we're often, me and Justine are reassuring each other of like, they chose you as their parent. You were born to parent them. And no one is better for you. Like, of course, like I am the highly sensitive child now raising a highly sensitive child. I
Mm.
am the psychic child raising a psychic child. I am the kid who didn't fit in raising the kid that doesn't fit in. Like, no one is better prepped for this than us. But of course, like the human side of us wants us to doubt ourselves constantly. And we live in a world that is conditioning us to doubt ourselves constantly. But we like just as our kids were made to be born and being raised in 2025, like we were born and created to parent them with all of their challenges and their struggles and their uniquenesses. And also, I find it funny, like this doesn't mean that we are going to raise like a whole bunch of hippie kids.
Yeah.
Like this is intuition is like creating the best politicians, the best leaders, the best scientists.
Yeah.
Like that is intuition. It doesn't mean they're all going to become like Reiki and yoga teachers and meditation teachers. They are hopefully going to become the leaders of countries
Yeah.
who can tap into their intuition and find an anchor point in themselves when everything is turning to shit around them and can read places and spaces and other people's motives. Like this is when we need our intuition and kids who grow into adults who trust their intuitions for these all types of roles, not just in the healing space.
I love that you said that because my eldest son came to me 4 years ago and he's like always wanted to fly since he was two. He was like adamant. And I've always wondered whether he had some connection to a past life where he was a pilot because he just knew things from a really young age. And he said to me, "Oh, I want to go and join the air cadets because I'm going to be in the army and the air force." And every part of me was like,
Mm.
no, because I'm very anti-violence. I've never in my million, years would I want to choose that for my child or as a parent. And I looked at him in the eyes and I went, "Honey, you feel that's what you feel like you need to do? Let's do it. Let's get you in there." And he's getting his pilot license at the moment before he's going to get his car license, and he's going to go to the Air Force and that's his dream. And at first it was like this part of me, my brain, my ego was so fighting that. And then exactly what you're saying though, imagine someone who is connected to their soul and their self in that kind of environment to be able to use their skills in whatever way they want to use it, but from that very aligned place, right? Where they have,
What is better? We're not eradicating war. In
yeah,
an idealistic society, we would not need soldiers, we would not need fighters, but we do, and we will continue to, probably more than ever. Like we all know how the world is shifting. We all know we're facing a crumbling
yeah,
to rebuild again. So, like, who better on the front line? Who better who's having to be in these spaces? Because someone needs to be.
yeah,
So who better than like boys like your son who are compassionate and empathetic and, centered within themselves and have a big picture view of the world and what they're fighting for. Like this is truly what we need. And like I'm so lucky with the people around me. Like my husband is not within this spiritual world. He's a scientist.
mm,
He is so grounded in like evidence and facts and stats and give
yeah,
me a peer-reviewed paper and I will believe it.
yeah,
And so often, like, and me and Justine laugh about it. I'm like, oh, I wish I just had this like hippy dippy husband, but like we are perfect together.
yeah,
We are the yin and yang, the left and right brain.
yeah,
And like within our family unit, he is still very spiritual in his own grounded way. And he's, nature is his church. He's an environmental scientist and he's very practical and logical. And like we are the perfect partnership together.
mm,
And he is a brilliant leader and a manager and knows how to raise people up. And he does more service in that role than he would ever do if he was like a yoga teacher.
yeah,
He there's much more of a purpose in that part. So there's so many ways that our kids will go on to benefit the planet and society. And again, like it's easy for us working in this space to want our kids to all be like in the spiritual space, to go on into those roles. But again, that's us trying to conform them with our own, values and the
mm,
systems we're placing worth on.
yeah.
I've got three kids, and I'm sure they will all be hugely different.
Mm,
And my girls are fiery and opinionated, and they are not placid in any way. And my little boy is a deep feeler, and they're shaking up everything around gender and purpose and what their desires and fears are.
mm.
And yeah, so how can we allow them to do it in their way?
Yeah, and it's just giving them permission, right, to live their own path. Like I'm not here to tell them what the path's supposed to be. I'm just here for them to
Mm,
be on the path. And I think allowing them to decide what they want. And I'd love to know what your thoughts are though on past lives with our kids. And this is something that has really popped up to me this morning. If our children have lived all these past lives, how does that influence the things that they choose for themselves now? For example, my son
mm,
wanting to be a pilot. My middle son has no idea what he wants to do with his life, and he just is this amazing kind of sponge. He mirrors everything around him, kind of thing. And I love that he's like a beautiful mirror, and I'm trying to help him embrace like you get to decide what's right for you, and you don't have to do things to fit in or be accepted and things like that. My daughter, who also since she was 2, she's like, I want to be a fashion designer. She just knew it. She just walked
mm.
was stood with mannequins, touching fabrics. I can't get that kid out of spotlight. She will just be there for hours touching.
Yes.
And I feel like my eldest and my youngest, somehow they already kind of knew what they wanted to be right before they got here. Do you,
Mm.
how does their past lives influence how they show up as children and those passions that they have for what they want to do in the world?
There does seem to be, from all the research that has been done out there and within my book, a common thread
Yeah.
that there often is commonalities between like what you did and experienced and who you were in your past lives, and then even the hobbies or the career paths that you then take up in this life. Particularly with things like flying planes or being in defense. Like, again, even my husband, who would not outwardly say that he believes in past lives at all, has a reoccurring dream of being in a Second World War and can see the intricate details of the tanks around him, of the weapons he's holding, like way beyond what he's seen in movies. And he has a real pull to Anzac Day here. We have never missed a dawn service apart from the year I gave birth to my son on Anzac Day, but it's the only year that he needs to be there. Like in a way beyond just like I like to go turn up and show respect. He feels a pull to needing to be there to respect the Anzacs. And like today, I look at that stuff and like, yeah, you could say, oh, whatever. It's that doesn't mean it's a past life. But again, we have this knowing. We know the difference. It's like when you know the difference between a dream, a normal dream, and a dream with a deeper meaning. And the same with our kids. What are they consistently being drawn to? And sometimes out of nowhere, like your son. You haven't primed him to go into defense.
Absolutely not.
Quite the opposite, right?
Yeah.
And yet he feels this pull to it. So it'll be interesting to see like any recurring dreams around being in wartime or any memories that start to come up. Or again, like I've spoken to kids and like one little girl had a real pull towards everything to do with ancient Egypt
Mm,
and could tell you each intricate details about the tombs and the pyramids and hieroglyphics and just wants to watch Egyptian documentaries over and over again from the age of 5. And then remembered a past life or had a dream where she remembered being born in ancient Egypt and a portal opening up and dying and then choosing to come back with her mum in this lifetime. And
um,
again, her mum was like, it wasn't something I was pushing on to her.
yeah.
She was just coming up with this stuff. And we've all seen our kids having this like strange, passionate desire to suddenly like, I want to start sailing or I want to learn about this or designing fashion design or whatever it is. And it's just being really open and like, it doesn't have to be serious, like playful and having fun with it. Like, what could this mean? Like, I just love exploring this stuff. Like, my little girl, I learned from a past life reading that she was a pagan herbalist. And I was showing her walking through the countryside, surrounded by fog,
Mm,
picking mushrooms, putting them in a little pan to make them into tinctures to help people. That's truly where she wants to be now. She wants to be in a forest. She's 8. She is this wacky little fairy. I actually was stopped. I was walking through a market locally, and there was a medium there. And we were just strolling by the stall, and the medium came out to me and said, I have to tell you, do you know your daughter's a fairy? And I was like, yeah, man, I know. Like, this is nothing new to me. Like, she absolutely is. She strolled into school the other day. We'd been camping and there was peacocks where we were camping, and she had gathered all these peacock feathers.
Oh.
And she went into school on the Monday. She had a yoga bag filled with peacock feathers sticking out the back. She's 8. She's got half her head shaved at the moment and the other half dyed pink. And she's not trying to be out there. She is just
Yeah.
is who she is. She is not trying to prove a point. She is just living purely authentically of what feels true to her. And she wants to spend time with my husband, the environmental scientist. She wants to be walking through forests and hiking with him. And that just makes her happy.
Yeah.
And so just looking for these clues. And again, it doesn't have to be my child is this like pixie little thing. Like my little boy wants to be an engineer. It could be wanting to be a scientist. Like, what could that mean beyond just I've watched a show and that sparked my interest? What could it be about what they're bringing forward? And then asking the same for you as an adult. What are your loves? What are your fears? And does it feel like you're just reacting to, something you saw on Instagram that's made you scared about this thing? Or does it feel like a deeper truth for you? Like my first experience with past life healing was to do with my eating disorder, which I had through my teenage years and most of my 20s. And I had a past life therapy session, my first ever experience where was told that I died in a previous life from drinking contaminated water. And that's why in this life I felt and still feel such a fear around unsafe food, unsafe drink, and this constant fear that comes up when someone else prepares my food, when someone else hands me a drink.
Yeah.
And, for so many years I went through traditional eating disorder therapy and I had all the reasons on paper why I would want control, or my dad was sick when I was younger. And that's when it came up. And sure, that made sense to a point, but it never really felt true to me. And then from that past life therapy session, it was like a missing piece of the puzzle of me. And I was able to stop working so hard to recover from my eating disorder and really just relax into the truth of who I was and what I need to actually be able to exist with it,
Yeah.
which is saying to myself, is this a real fear? Is this an old story? Where is this fear really coming from? And then I went on in later years to learn more about that past life, to learn that in that life, my current husband now had also been with me in that life, how it impacts our relationship. In that life, I had died right after getting my period, how that I had such an ingrained fear as a child of starting my period and seeing blood in the toilet. It literally consumed me when I was about 10, 11, 12 in this life. And I would never have understood all that, right? I would have never have got to the root of that and been able to lessen it if I hadn't looked at the big picture of okay, if it's not just me being crazy about this thing as a child, what could it be? And that, when you can open up new levels of healing, it just makes a new level of recovery possible.
Two things popped up when you were speaking there. The first question that came to me, because you said that you and your husband were connected in a past life.
Yes.
Our connection to our children in past lives, because my daughter's convinced that we were sisters in our past life. And she says,
Yep.
next life, I get to be your mum. And she is like, and I'm like, this is so, and I feel, I know that mothers and daughters have a deep bond, but I feel like the moment I saw her, I was like, I've known you since forever. I've known you beyond this. I broke out into an ancient song in an ancient language that I'd never heard of, never spoken before. This was right when I was just starting my spiritual journey. And I just started singing in this other language to this little baby. And I didn't know what was going on or what was happening, because it just kind of came out of me. And we've had this very special bond. She says that we were sisters in past life. What kind of interconnection, or can you speak a bit to the interconnection of our children's past lives and our past lives? And do each of us to come and find each other in this lifetime again? And how often does that happen?
It seems to be incredibly common. We call it, the many experts, and use this phrase in the book of soul clusters, how we cluster with the same souls over again. It can be friend and in different dynamics, like you said, mother, daughter, sister, sister, father, son. But it's a completion of a cycle and a constant learning and evolved state together. So like we all know, we're not going to perfect this relationship. We are messing things up as parents every day. A few of us are like, I am nailing this to the mum and always getting it right. So at the end of our life together with our kids, we have still got so much to learn and so much to do and so much to heal. So often we do come back with the same souls over and over again. And so with my husband, because I died young in that life where I drank contaminated water, of course, we were always destined to come back together again. And I did have that knowing when I saw him. Like a few weeks before I met him, I was in another relationship and I left it just overnight. I had this knowing like something is coming and I have to be out of this to be ready. And people around me thought I was crazy. Like it made no sense. And then a few weeks later, I met my now husband and we basically moved in together immediately. Like 10 years later, we've had 3 kids. Also, my body knew. So, as I mentioned, my first husband died when I was 23, and I had my last period on the day of his funeral, and I didn't have a period again for 7 years.
Wow.
And I went through all the tests, and we put it down to grief and stress. But again, it didn't make complete sense to me because I was kind of out of the real thickness of grief. I was kind of happy enough. I was, getting on my life. My period was not coming back. 7 years went by. The week I met my now husband, my period came back.
That's amazing.
And we went on to have, 3 beautiful natural pregnancies. And in fact, my third daughter, who was born during lockdown, we laugh because we do not know how she was conceived. We're like, we've done the maths. There is nothing physically we did together during that time which would have created a baby. Like, it makes no sense to me at all. Like, we were sexually active, but that makes no sense how that happened. We were not having penetrative sex. Like, it's crazy to us. And we always laugh because we're like, well, she really wanted to be here. She really wanted to be not only join our family, but as she said, she chose to be born during lockdown. She was not hanging around. And even my husband, the scientist, the atheist, he's like, yeah, I guess she just wanted to be with us and she chose us and she landed in that moment in time. And yeah, I believe I've been with all my kids before. And I choose to believe I'll be with them again. And what a relief that is, that on the day in this lifetime that I say goodbye to them, or, I see them as they are now for the last time through these eyes for the last time, that I can believe this won't be the last time that we get to hold each other and be together and learn from each other and love each other in whatever dynamic that takes in this next version of our soul cluster. God, like the relief that brings for me is just life changing because then I can show up without fear. Like I've lost people before, you've lost people, and that can significantly impact how we can mother. Like when I sit in my human fear of death, and I remember losing my first husband, I can't show up and love my kids. I can't show up and love my husband because I am too constricted by fear to be with them and see them. I can't let myself go there. When I can exhale and go, it's okay. We have lifetimes together. And, when I tuck my kids into bed, I say, I love you in this lifetime and every lifetime. And that means I can show up as a present and loving parent who feels safe to love them. And I think that was probably the biggest lesson and gift of this book was like really realizing that.
Yeah, that is such a gift. My daughter taught me that. Like we were having a conversation about death and we never shy away from conversations about death. She said to me, it's okay when you die, Mum, because I'll get to see you again in our next life together. And that relief from hearing her say that gave me that feeling of lightness. And I was like, of course, we have like so many times together, not just this time. And I always sort of think to myself, like, because she was born, she was in my womb when I went through tremendous grief. I lost someone that I really, truly loved and one of my closest friends. And he was also someone I was madly in love with, secretly in love with. And she felt the grief of losing him in my womb. And she came out and she screamed for a full year, like every day. She just screamed and screamed and screamed. And the only way she would sleep was if I was driving, which was kind of cool because I listened to podcasts and learnt spirituality that way. And, there's all a reason for it. But I feel like she has this really deep intelligence around death and a very open view of like what death means and that it's not something to be feared or something to be worried about. And when she does have moments of concern or fear, she always reminds herself and then reminds me, it's okay, because even if you do get sick and you do die, we're going to get to hang out a lifetime. And she tells that to my middle son, who has quite a lot of fear around death. And she reminds him too. And I think what a gift to give yourself and your kids to be able to sit in that conversation of like, it's not just this time, it's many times together. And Heaven's story for me was always very comforting as a child until I started questioning a few things and I was unsure. And then I felt that unsafety again around death. And I feel so much safety now thinking about the lifetimes that I'll get to live and learning about my past life and things like that. And I value so much what my kids are teaching me about that openness around death and how it's okay. And for anyone who kind of doesn't have children, experience with children who are starting to have these, understandings or memories, as a parent who hasn't experienced a lot of that, what can you recommend they do in times where your daughter turns around and says to you, that's okay, we'll meet up in the next lifetime? What's some practical tools that parents can start to use to be able to be okay with the openness of these new children's ideas about?
The best thing is literally opening the questions. Just let them like roll with it without shutting it down, but also without making it too big, right? Like, so when your kids are talking about death or, we also don't have to be like, oh my goodness, you are like amazing. And like, let's tell everyone about like, we don't want to put too much emphasis on anything with our kids because so many of actually like these past life memories or statements about death or whatever it is, they say as if they're talking about like their favorite Pokemon character. And then they just flow on to the next thing. Like my daughter's been reading some of the articles about the book with stuff she said in it, but she can't remember. She's like, wow, did I say that? Yeah, you like dropped this knowledge bomb and then like you just went on to the next beautiful thing or started talking to me about wanting an ice cream or whatever it was. We don't have to like go eat. Like this book definitely is not like put your kids into past life regression. It's just let them like be open and flowing with what they're saying so they can explore it. And also, we don't have to, I think, again, going back to that hierarchy of parents needing the answers, especially around death, we don't have to know the answers. We don't have to say we agree with them. And we don't have to comfort them by saying, this is the truth. Like, I've just written a whole book about past life parenting. But when my kids talk about death, which like yours, they do a lot, they love chatting about death, especially my littlest one. I am the first one to say, do you know what? Like, none of us know.
No
And
one
like,
actually knows.
isn't that the greatest mystery? And how exciting that one day we get to go through this and find out. And yeah, you may not remember, but you've already done it once. You've already done it and you're here. And now we get to figure it out all over again. And I think, there's that thing that we feel, especially like I was raised in a Catholic upbringing, that like we need to give our kids something concrete to hang their fears on. Like, this is heaven. This is what it looks like. And this is what's going to happen because that's going to help them. But actually, so much more of that is saying, like, what feels true for you? And you get to explore this. And like, this feels true to me. And this helps me to feel safe and seen and loved. And I'm going to choose to believe this. But what feels true for you? I was so lucky that like I had a really multi-faith upbringing. So I was raised in a Catholic school, in a Catholic household. But then my dad was diagnosed with cancer when I was a teenager. And during his chemo and his treatment, He began having Reiki. Then he began to study Buddhism and Hinduism. And within my family, he just allowed me to learn little bits of everything. And now I see what a gift that was. Because, we are kind of the generation, you and I, who really began, so many of us, to turn our back on like one traditional religion, who realized, hang on, I'm not good with the judgment. I'm not good with this rigidity. It doesn't sit good to me that like my friends who are having IVF feel judged, or like they're doing the wrong thing, or my gay friends are being cast out of the system that I used to find comfort in. And we have to broaden our view of belief to be like, and there's parents in the book who were Catholics but are talking to their kids about past lives.
Yeah.
Or like this big smorgasbord of beliefs of saying we don't have to only believe one thing. So when we're talking to our kids, they may say things that are outside your box of belief.
Yeah.
And we don't have to say it's right. We don't have to say it's wrong. We don't have to make a big deal. Yeah. But we can just really be open to those conversations. Like, draw a picture of what you think happens after we die. My little girl wrote a whole children's book when she was 7 called Stars in the Sky. And the first line is, everybody dies and that's okay. And she just came out, she brought it home from the school. And she just handed it to me. Her teacher probably didn't know what to do with it. But yeah, she was so wonderfully blunt. Everybody dies and that's okay. And then their grandmother, their great-grandma, a year ago from my launch day of my book, their great-grandmother, my grandma, died. And the same day, one of our chickens died. And my son called up my dad. It was his mum that had died. Called up my dad and said, Nanny's died. So's our chicken. And it was so beautifully matter of fact of like, same gravitas placed on both of those beings. Our chicken died and Nanny died today. And my dad just burst into laughter, and it was so healing for him to just hear his little 6-year-old grandson wanting to talk about it, where everybody else was like tiptoeing around it. And my little boy said to him, are we going to put Nanny's body on a raft and push it out to sea and set fire to it? Because that's what we do, isn't it? And my dad, because he's so spiritually open, said, oh, is that what you've done? Is that what you do? And I think my little boy didn't even go down the road of being like, yeah, that's what we did. He was like, no, yeah, that's what we do. And again, my dad was didn't put massive emphasis on it, didn't make a big deal of it, but just chatted to my little boy like he was talking about the weather or, what he'd done at school. Just had this really casual, light, curious conversation about death, even to do with his own mom. And I think I learned so much from my dad about how we can approach spirituality in a way that isn't heavy, isn't like everybody needs to believe what I believe, can come up in conversation when it feels relevant, but we don't have to push it or force it. And I learned so much from my dad about that because, he is this London, West End guy who wears crystals secretly under his t-shirt and will send me meditations that he thinks will help me and sends me distance healing, but doesn't even tell me he's doing it. And will talk to me, comes out with these amazing insights, but, doesn't feel like he's constantly hammering it down my throat. And that's really what I try and do with my kids when it comes to all of these topics too.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that because I feel sometimes what can happen is when we're so enthusiastic about our spiritual findings is that we can project them onto everyone around us. And I find myself being very mindful not to do that with my children because I want them to ask questions and figure it out themselves and get curious about things. And I share all my ideas if they ask me about them and they see me all the time around the house doing odd things. And like my daughter was in nature with me the other day. She goes, you're like the weirdest mum. It's the best. And I was like, you just went and touched every tree as you're walking past them. I'm like, yeah. She goes, but I love it. And so then she's kind of doing her own thing. And I think it's just, they see an odd mum around them and they have their own ideas from that, but I try not to push that on them. How can we, when we are having these big spiritual insights, or even just having the conversation with our kids about past lives, how can we do that delicately without sort of pushing it onto them? What's a great way to introduce this concept of past lives with our
Mm.
kids?
I think it's not even about talking to them about like past lives. It's not about being like, what do you think? Do you think you're reincarnated? You know, like, unless that literally comes up really naturally, it's about, again, like teaching them that they are more than this body, that they are more than this moment is more than this moment in like a really natural way. So it's like what you do with your daughter. It's like, yeah, you go for a walk in nature, but you don't just go say we're getting from A to B. It's like talking about, how do you feel when you're in a forest? Do you think the trees talk to you? Or like, do you know what? Some people say there's fairies that live in the trees. Can you feel that? Or did you want to sit down under this tree and see, like, how do you feel when your body connects to the earth? Like, again, it doesn't have to be this big, like, heavy, like, let's talk about spirituality and see how spiritual you are. You know, it can be like, you know, there's examples in the book of mums and their kids healing whilst watching a Disney movie where like a little fairy in it like leans into who she is. And the mum felt the ripple effect of healing in that moment and felt it through her kids too. Like, it doesn't have to be like, I am going to put them into past life regression therapy and I'm going to do it for myself. Like, we've got enough on our to-do list without thinking now we have to explore this big thing. It's about using music and seeing how they react to different types of music, or when you're going to different places and spaces, and where are they relaxed and grounded, where are they triggered. So it doesn't have to be a big conversation about reincarnation. It can be much more subtle than that, which again is such a relief.
Yes.
You know, an A-type parent who, like, we desperately want the best for our kids and their souls. Like, we actually don't have to work that hard. They are healing without even trying to heal. We are healing without even trying to heal,
Mm,
just by kind of coexisting together.
mm,
Like, this lifetime, the reason we come back as a cluster of souls is to learn and to heal. And it's happening with us without us having to constantly force it, as
mm.
long as, again, we are open to it.
Yeah, that's so true. My daughter and my son like to do spa days on me. And so I lie down, they give me massages and things. And I noticed one day we're doing the spa day, and my daughter starts placing shells and crystals all over me. And then she
Mm.
goes over to my witchy collection of things and and I can hear her like getting things. And then I kind of open my eyes a little bit, and she's got a spell bag and she's running the spell bag like over my body from my head all the way down to my feet. And I thought to myself, like, I don't need to teach this girl anything. Like, she's going to explore and experiment and figure things out and ask questions if she needs to. But she's just intuitively gone and placed crystals all over my body, grabbed a bag. I've never done a healing on my kids before. So she's not learnt that from
Mm.
me. She's never seen me do a healing for anybody else. She's just gone and experimented. And so it's like almost letting them lead the way is so much easier, right?
And like, have stuff around, you know, teach them about energy cleansing. Like, my 3-year-old knows how to wield a smudge stick. She will see me do it and she will go and smudge her bedroom. And she knows how to pick up my singing bowl and use it. Like, she instinctively knows what to do. And like, I think we can feel as parents when we're forcing something, when we feel vulnerable, we feel insecure, we feel we need to fix something. Like, that would be the moment where we're like trying to force our kids to like get the crystals out and do something.
Mm,
Like, a beautiful example, a couple of weeks ago, I was heading into knowing I've got a big promotional tour for this book, which is great, but scary and vulnerable and all the feelings. And I don't talk to my first husband a lot anymore, mainly because I have a new husband and 3 kids. There's a lot of talking going on already. But I was in the shower and his name was Owen, and I was connecting to him and saying, look, I really got to be gutsy over the next while. This book is like out there and scary. And, you know, can you just, you know, give me a sign that you're around, that you're with me? And I forgot about it. And then, because we're in the middle of renovations, we've got all these boxes we've had packed up, and I brought them all into the living room to start sorting through them, going through them. And my 8-year-old, she takes out a dress from my big pile of clothes and she puts this dress on, this white, um, like Victorian kind of lace dress. And she starts twirling and dancing in the living room and twirling, twirling, twirling. And my first husband, Owen, brought me that dress the week we met. I wore it to a music festival with him, and I wore it to his funeral.
Mm.
And I watched her dancing in this dress. She doesn't know. I didn't force it. I didn't, ask her for anything or like create that situation to say, put this on, do this thing. And I also tried not to make too big a deal from it. It was funny. I actually took a video of it and I was going to post it on Instagram. And, as we do as content creators, I was like, oh, this will make a great reel. I can say my husband bought me this dress and now isn't this amazing? And I sit with it and just thought, like, just be with it, Amy. You
Yeah.
don't need to make it bigger. You don't need to talk to her about it or
Mm.
make it bigger. Like, just curiously and lightly notice it. Like, say, okay, I hear you. I see you. The
Mm.
next minute, she took the dress off, she stuffed it in a ball and jammed it back into a box again and put on another thing that I had in my box of stuff and wandered out into the garden in that.
Yes.
And that kind of sums it up to me. It's like these spontaneous moments of like intergenerational healing that happen all the time in our families without us even noticing it. And we don't need to force it or manufacture it. They are happening for us and around us.
Mm.
And I guess there's just a level of trust that it's all doing its thing.
Mm. And sitting lightly with that. I love the
Yeah.
idea of like, we don't always have to dive deeper, like into these little
Yes.
moments. We can just allow them to be magical moments and just sit in the essence of the magic without talking about the magic or bringing up the why or where did you get that from? Or like we could just sit and enjoy how magic that
We
was.
don't have to unpack it all with our kids, right? And that's even around like death, especially when our kids are young. Someone dies, like let them talk about it, let them explore it. But we don't have to like hammer it home or force them to unpack it in a way that doesn't feel true for them.
Mm.
They will bring up these topics when they're ready, when they have something to say, when they have something to feel. But we don't always have to feel like, again, coming back to like, we're the teacher, we're the guide, we're the one that needs to lead them everywhere. We don't have to constantly hammer it home.
Mm.
When they want to talk about it, we can talk about it. And if we build a relationship of trust and openness, they can come to us when they want to.
Yes.
And hopefully, I have moments in the book where one of my children wanted to talk about what happens after we die. And I was trying to make dinner and trying to finish on deadline. And I completely shut it down. And I had one of those moments. I'm like, this is so inconvenient. I'll talk to you about it later. I can't even remember. I completely shut them down because we all have moments where we're like, do you know what? I can't talk about reincarnation now. I have a massive to-do list and your sister's just spilled like a cup of coffee into the laundry and something the dogs got out and everything's happening.
Yeah.
And then I circled back that night and, sat with them in that child in bed that night and said, oh, I know you wanted me to talk about this earlier. I'm really open to talking about it now if you want to. And I actually think my daughter was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
So, it's also that we don't have to put pressure on ourselves to be constantly ready for a spiritually awakened conversation.
Yes.
Um,
Same as you. It's sometimes I was saying with my partner where we came together to do the fucking work and grow. At some days we don't want to grow. And so we have this rule that we're allowed to say, like, today I don't feel like growing.
I love that.
Put a pin in it.
Yeah.
We will go deep into this another day because today I don't have the mental, emotional, or spiritual capacity to do anything that is growth wise,
And sometimes when your son or daughter wakes up and says, I had a dream about being a fireman, it's not a past life. They just watched something on telly last night and it popped into their dream. We don't have to then now become this like obsessive past life parent who
Mm.
sees into everything. Like that is exhausting.
Yes.
It's just seeing the big picture of it all and how we can take these concepts in a way that helps us to find relief as a parent, helps our kids to expand and grow as and when they need to at the pace that they need to, but with a little bit more lightness.
Oh, so good. I love that. And I think that's something I'm going to carry because my little nerdy inner self was like, we're gonna dive into this book and we're gonna get so good at this.
Yeah, totally. And I am the A type. I am the perfectionist who's like, this is going to be what we do now. We are dedicated to past life parenting.
Yeah, I'm ready. Stepped out about it, at 8 o'clock this morning. It's our anniversary. I'm like, I've just got to talk about this book.
Exactly. And I love that, right? And let's have the conversations. But I'm very happy for people to dip into this book, to take what works for them, to ignore the rest.
Yeah.
This book took me 3 years to research, so don't expect to implement it in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It was a huge long-term journey for me that's still unraveling and, is still a roller coaster. And I'm still learning and growing from it. So yeah, it's not going to be like, yep, here we've got a plan and it's all going to be put into motion in the next 48 hours. I definitely don't want to put any more pressure on parents than we already have.
Yeah, the permission to hold it lightly. I absolutely love that. And yeah, I've taken up so much of your time. I just have one more question. It's a side quest question of mine that I thought I could ask you because I know you've done so much research into past lives. When I first started communicating with trees, one of the things they told me was that they are space holders for souls that don't have anywhere to go yet. And so some of the trees that I talked to there's the tree spirit, but they also have other spirits connected to those trees. And the messaging that I got was that trees can act as space holders when people aren't ready to choose or to move into their next life. Did you find anything in your research and your exploring around this space in which we hang out before we choose the next life we come to?
I love that. I haven't heard about trees as space holders, but it makes so much sense to me in terms of my own experiences within nature and also like what I've learned through researching this book. I think in past lives and when it comes to all of this, like we're so linear in our thinking because even like you, what I hit against with when I first started researching it was like, but how are mediums talking to dead people? Like, how have I spoken to my first husband? Does that mean that like that's not true? Is that because like, okay, but is he reincarnated? And then how am I talking to him?
Yeah, and if it's all happening at the same time, how does that?
Exactly. So is that not true? And that's true. And like that's false. But like what I learned from researching this book is that our souls are so much bigger than we think they are. And it's really I kept being shown by experts this image of this like golden ball with like star lights, like a little star drop coming in and out and coming in and out. And like part of our soul can be reincarnated as this person. And yet part of our soul is still there that we can connect with and talk to. And that's the part with my first husband I'm speaking to. And yet he's also reincarnated. And that's when we really start getting too heady about it, right? Of like, but how can that all be true? And I'm not here to give you anyone the answer, right? It's really about like feeling into what feels true for us. And there is an in between. There is an in between where we're choosing our next life and we're choosing our families. And our kids are telling us repeatedly about, I remember being in the portal. They say portal a lot. They say, I remember a ball of light and I remember being in it and I remember making my next choices. And, my little girl in her book was like, yep, we go up to the stars and we're sleeping there for as long as we need to rest. And then we get to choose whether to come back down again. So this holding space makes perfect sense to us, especially when you think of we do need to rest. Even our souls need to rest. Like, I don't know about you, but if I think about living this long life and then dying and then immediately springballing back down to earth,
Yeah.
it feels exhausting. Like, I'm not ready for that. I need
Yeah.
to rest in the in between of like beautiful nothingness and choice for a little while. So that makes sense to me, that space holder of the trees. And like, I would choose that. And I love that. And I think when I'm walking my kids beneath the trees or underneath the trees, I'm going to start thinking of that and talking to the souls in the trees.
Yeah.
And asking them what they're choosing right now. Like, what are you choosing between?
Yes.
And how do you feel? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Like, and having those conversations just feels like a lovely layer of like spending time in nature that we can all tap into.
Yeah. And I think there's so much wisdom held in the connectivity between, the reciprocity obviously between trees and humans, but there's something so much
Mm.
deeper. And I haven't taught tree communication for 4 years now. I've been on a different journey. Learning to love and be loved has been it took over my life. And I'm kind of doing more of the spirituality and separation processing and all that. But I always come back to it. I always come back to my clients. Like, at the end of the day, if you want to feel closer to God, go and stand in the presence of a tree and have a moment of sharing energy with the tree, and you'll feel the nothing, like that there is nothing that separates anything. And there's a golden stream of light that the trees run through everything to connect to all of us. And along the golden stream of light, there are little dot points. And when you were talking about the little flicks of, you know, the golden sparks that come off that center ball, it reminded me of when I see the golden stream of light between the trees.
Well, nature, and like I'll leave you with one story. Like my husband, the scientist, the logical scientist, you know, where we come together in our beliefs is spending time with nature. And I learned a past life about him where he had lived in South America, near Machu Picchu, and he was going to be drawn back to that space. And when I met him, even though we'd fallen madly in love, he said to me, I'm going traveling around South America for 6 months. And kind of, you either come with me or I'm going anyway. And at the time, I think I was a bit offended. I was like, oh, thanks. But I did. I went with him, and, you know, it was a beautiful trip for us. But we did this hike, a 5-day hike towards Machu Picchu. And we had this beautiful experience, and we had an amazing guide. And I remember we hiked up this snow-covered mountain, and at the top, the guide talked us through an offering to Pachamama, Mother Earth, where we each picked 3 leaves that represented something we needed to leave behind. And we left them on underneath rocks at the top of the mountain. And she said, when you step down the other side of this mountain and your feet plant on the ground at the bottom of the mountain, you will be stepping into your new life. And my husband's really open, and again, nature. So he was like totally into this. And actually we do it on all of our hikes now. But so he left his 3 leaves, and I left my 3 leaves, and we hiked down this other side of the mountain. And when he stood on the bottom, he turned to me and asked me to marry him.
Oh.
And he said to me later, we laughed, because he said, I didn't mean to do it. He said, I didn't plan to do it. I did not, like, he said, I was planning to wait until we got back to Australia because I wanted to carry a ring, and I wasn't going to carry a ring around South America. But he said, when my feet touched the bottom of that mountain, something just took over me, and I knew you had to ask me. I had to ask you.
That is such a beautiful story.
And to me, again, it's proof, like, he doesn't have a set belief. Yeah. He wasn't there thinking, what does this ritual mean to me? He wasn't overthinking it or analyzing it. He just knew that when he stepped off that mountain, he left his past behind, and karmically, he knew what to do next. And we always laugh because I always say, no take backsies. You can't say, like, Pachamama told me to do it. But it just is so proof of, like, the healing power of nature, the healing power of trust. Yeah. And that our path is still with free will set out for us if we can just relax into it.
And so much wisdom, right? From that's such a freeing way to be. And even just being in nature and asking questions, and watching and waiting for the answers to come that your logical brain just cannot even try to come up with or fathom. You know, like, there's such an ease to intuitive work when you're just in nature. You don't have to try. Like, if you want to feel better, just go hang out underneath a tree, and that's all you have to do. That's such an easy thing that every single person can do at any point if they can get outside. So yeah, I'm a massive fan of the beautiful interconnection of nature and how much support we have if we only just allow ourselves to be open to the spirit of nature around us. So
yeah,
it's been so lovely to have you on the show. I could ask you questions. I still have so many. I'm just reading the chapter on co-parenting, past parenting, and that is bringing up lots of new things for me, and it's been very fascinating. So I'm sure that I'm going to jump on and have a look at is a little course that you have on your website that people can...
Yeah, there's a 5-day course just to really break. I mean, as you've discovered, there's so much in the book. Yes. That I also wanted to give parents, like, some real pillars they can integrate into their life. So there's a 5-day past life parenting plan, which really breaks down some of the key aspects of the book. So you can get it as a PDF. So even when you're thinking, like, oh my God, all this stuff, how do I actually take this practically into our family's life? I really wanted to give something tangible that you can do with your kids and yourself. Yeah. So yeah, there's a good plan on my website.
Yeah, amazing. I'm definitely going to go over and have a look at that. I'll leave it in the show notes as well. And when is your book coming out?
So it is now out globally. So yeah, you can literally buy it in every country, I think. So it has, yeah, come out with a boom.
And is there a way to work with you around these past life experiences for any of my audience who's like, I just would love to have some really like one-to-one or group support or any
Yes.
or do you have anything that you can?
Yeah, on my website, I've now got a tab for past life parenting.
Okay, cool.
And there's a heap of the references from the book are in there and the past life parenting plan. But also, I do Akashic record readings and meditation journeys where I take people into this. Spaces are super limited because of all the
Imagine.
other stuff and mum life. But if I don't have spots, I do have a waiting list. So if people jump onto the past life section of my website, past life parenting, they'll find all the links.
Amazing. You'll see me on that little wait list soon.
Yeah.
Well, it's been so lovely to have you on the show. I really appreciate all of your time and all of your wisdom. And thank you for helping parents of the children who have these experiences as a child who had so many experiences and felt like the biggest weirdo and was taught to put it away, from a good place. My mum and
Mm.
family had a good intentions. It's so important for me to see someone doing the work that you're doing in the world, and I'm just really grateful for it. And yeah, I can't wait to learn more from you.
Oh, thanks for the convo. It was awesome.